Welcome back to Rise Up with Mackenzie. This is our first episode of Rise Up Stories. For those of you who don't know what Rise Up Stories is, it's where I invite a guest to come talk and to share their experience or story of how they've risen up in their lives out of the world with God's help to reach their divine potential, future, and their mission. So thank you for joining us. Today we have a guest speaker. His name is Jared Leavitt, and he is this awesome guy who's one of my heroes who has so much to share. His story is so inspiring and it's impacted me. I know him through when he's come to visit my seminary class as well as him in my church, and his story is so empowering and impactful. So I'm going to bring him on here now so you guys can meet him and he can introduce himself to you. Okay, I think he's up here. Do you want to say hi?
Hi, Mackenzie. Hi, everyone.
Welcome. This is so special. I'm so excited to have you here. This is like awesome. So thanks for coming.
Thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
So do you want to introduce yourself and give a little background so everyone knows who you are?
Yeah, sure. So hi, everybody. Name's Jared Leavitt. I live in Portland, Oregon, and been here for, I guess, about 27 years almost. And I'm getting pretty old. I'm now a grandpa. I have 4 kids, and my wife and I have been married for almost 30 years, which is pretty amazing. That makes me really old, but that's okay. As you can see, I've got a bunch of jerseys here behind me. Football has been a major part of my life since I was a little boy. And I think there's 2 things that I would want anybody that's hearing my story to take away. Is one is that I believe that our Father in heaven cares about what your personal dreams and goals are. I think that he wants you to help achieve those goals. It doesn't matter what it is. It doesn't matter if you want to be a ballerina, or you want to be a heart surgeon, or you want to be a school teacher, or if you want to be a mom or a dad, right? Everybody has different dreams of things they want to be. And I believe that the Lord wants to help you achieve, whatever your goals are. When I was, I think the other main point I want to make, and I like people to understand, is that I also believe that we have certain things we want to do, but the Lord, he wants us to help achieve those, but he also has things that he wants us to do. He has a plan for each of us before we came to this earth, and he wants to make sure we understand what he wants us to accomplish. And that my second biggest point really is that the Lord he'll make more of your life than you can make of it without him. So even if you aren't as concerned with eternal things and more with things on this life, your life is going to be more fulfilling. You're going to have more joy and happiness, and most of all, you're going to have more peace. And really, there's a lot of things you can do to find joy and happiness. You can go on vacation, you can do fun things, but there's really nothing you can do to just find peace. And I think a lot of people in the world are looking for that peace. And so I think if you trust the Lord and put your life in his hands, that he's going to make more of your life than you're going to make without him. That's really what I believe in has happened in my life. And not that I've accomplished any great things, but I have 4 kids, and they're all successful human beings. And I have my first granddaughter. Anyway, I think those are amazing blessings. And I have an amazing wife that stood by me for 29 and a half years, and is my best friend. So all of these things to me are wildly successful. And also in my life, I'm surrounded with really good friends. I have very, very long friendships with um, some people from when I was just a little boy, you know. And these friendships are really, really important to me. And some of the best friends I have are from college and from when I was little, and even other people that I've made friends with later in life. So I think that the gospel perspective and having this belief in a divine being gives me a purpose, and that there's more, something bigger that I'm part of. And I believe everybody wants to believe in something. I think they want to believe in something bigger than themselves. And so the Lord helps us do that. He helps us find this peace. So, when I went to the Kinsey Seminary class, I talked about when I was probably in the fourth grade. I remember there was this store right across the street from our school. And the thing that's kind of funny I was thinking about is that when I was a kid, you had a lot more freedom than kids have today. It's kind of like today, kids have parents that follow them around and put bubble wrap around them. And I've done the same thing with my kids. But when I was a kid, it wasn't like that. But I lived in a small town, so we could pretty much go where we wanted and when we wanted, and there was no concerns about, strangers and that sort of thing kidnapping you or something bad happened to you. So anyway, when I was in grade school, I was in the fourth grade, kids would go over to the school at lunchtime all the time. And we'd go over there and we'd buy these packets of these football cards. And I was a fan of the Minnesota Vikings, and there was particularly a few people on there. Fran Tarkenton was one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL at the time, and they had the Vikings had this amazing defense they called the Purple People Eaters. So I was a big fan of the Vikings, and I got this pack, and I had, I don't know, Vikings card, and I told my friend that I said, hey, one day, my name's going to be on one of these football cards. And anyway, I didn't really think anything more of it after that time at the moment, but I said that. So as time went on, there are things that, and everybody, if you compare people's lives and the things they go through, everybody goes through different things. Everybody has different trials. Some people go through their life and they don't have anybody pass away that's close to them. Nobody in their family really dies. They don't really go through that experience. That's been the case in my wife's life. Her family, all of her siblings and her parents are alive, and her grandparents have recently deceased, but she has one grandfather that's 99 years old. He just turned 99 in December. And so she's really never had to go through that, experience of losing somebody really close to her. When I was 5 years old, my mother passed away. She was 29 years old, and I was actually had just turned 5 before she passed away. And I really only have maybe 2 memories of her. And sometimes, when you get as old as I am, then sometimes people tell you stories and you're not sure if they were your own memories, but I know there's 2 that were my own, that are my mother. And that had a massive impact on my life, not having a mother. And my father remarried, and a couple of years later or something. And then, so I had this stepmother, and they had 3 boys together. They're my 3 brothers. And I'm very close with them, just as close with them as my mother's siblings. So anyway, that didn't really change anything, but my home life was different than I had wanted it to be. It wasn't a comfortable situation for me. I never really felt like it was home. And so I think I don't really know who or what to blame, I don't know. If I would have been differently if my mother had lived and never passed away, but I definitely had a wild streak in me, and I didn't make good decisions as a young man. They weren't all bad, but they weren't all good either. So is, you're taught to go to church and you're taught to do all these things. But you also have your own freedom, your own mind, and you want to express yourself in certain ways, and you want to make your own decisions. And there's always a balance with that. Now looking as a father versus when I was a kid, you realize that parents try to put guardrails around you so that you don't harm yourself. It's like the analogy of, you let your child run out in the street and just let cars run you over. They're not going to let that happen. They want you to be able to run around, but they put you in the backyard where you're in a fence and you don't hurt yourself, but you still have some freedom. I think the way the Lord does that with is he protects us sometimes from our own decisions. Like the perfect example I always think of is Jonah and the whale. So Jonah didn't want to go preach to the city of Nineveh, and so he ran away from it. He didn't want to face the people there. It was a really, really hard thing the Lord was asking him to do. And so he runs away, and the story of him being swallowed by a large fish. Right? Scriptures don't actually say a whale, but they say a large fish. So by that event happening, the Lord was putting a fence around Jonah. Really, right? And now he could climb over the fence and just still ignore it. Like after he's inside the belly of this fish, and anyway, he escapes and lives, and he could have still chosen to climb over the fence and keep going. So the Lord puts these rails around our lives so that we'll make good decisions. He kind of nudges us along the right direction. Just like when we have our own children, they're starting to walk towards the stairs, and we redirect them another way, and hopefully they don't keep trying to walk towards the stairs. So he does the same thing with us as adults. And when I look back on my youth and decisions I was making, and even as I got older into my late teens and early 20s, I see how the Lord did similar things with me and putting rails, guardrails around my life. And he did that by letting me fail. And he let me fail at certain things. So when I was in high school, I guess it was, all through high school, I always had a job working for 3 years of my high school years. My first job I got was with a farmer. I was 13 years old, and I moved away from home and lived on this farm for a while. And then I worked for farmers the next few summers. So, you get up at 5 a.m. and you stop working when the sun goes down. So you learn how to work. It's a very good experience as far as teaching discipline and hard work and so forth. So I did that for a few summers. And then it was interesting though, because as I was growing up, there was a lot of turbulence in my family, and there was a lot of turbulence between, really between my father and my stepmother. And it was just, it wasn't a good situation. It wasn't a holistic feeling of the family. Like Mackenzie, you probably come home, you have a mother and father, and you feel, oh, great, this is my family, and it's cozy and it's warm and everybody likes each other, right? Well, there's a lot of people out there that don't have that same experience, right? Or even if they do have a mother and father, maybe they don't get along. So there's a lot of kids that go through different things, and that's what I went through as well. So quite frankly, as I got older in my teens, I pretty much just went where I wanted. And every once in a while, my dad would be like, he'd look around and be like, "Where's Jared? I don't know where Jared is." Yeah. I had an older brother who was even worse than me. He got in a lot more trouble than I did. And he quit high school when he was a senior, and he moved to California, and he didn't graduate from high school then. And so he was obviously experiencing some of the same things that I were with our family and so forth. But interesting opportunity came along when I was in high school. I kept playing football. I did sports growing up and played basketball and wrestled and did all this stuff and was in boxing. And anyway, football seemed to be what I was the best at. And when I lived in this really tiny town called Soda Springs in Idaho, and the summer before my senior year, my family moved to this still, Oregon we call a small town. It's called Pocatello, Idaho. There's about, I don't know, 45 or 50,000 people there, probably still about the same size today. But to me, that was the big city, right? So I moved to this new high school, and all of a sudden it was a whole new experience, right? It was, 4 times the size of my other high school and so forth. So it actually, when I look back on it, turned out to be a really good experience. But I had lived in this really tiny protected town from kindergarten all the way through my junior year of high school. So football started to take off for me, and I started to become a lot better football player. And at the end of my high school year, I was selected to be on this all-star team. And in Idaho, they would take all the schools in the north half of Idaho and all the schools in the south half, and they'd have create two all-star teams, and then you would play each other. So I was invited to play on the south team, but I wasn't going to do it. So right after I graduated from high school, quite frankly, I was kind of lost because I had zero plans to go to college. It's kind of funny when I think back on it now, because I didn't really have any plans. My only thought was for tomorrow. Like, if it's Monday, what am I going to do Tuesday? If it's Tuesday, what am I going to do Thursday? If it's Wednesday, I'd probably think, oh, what's going to happen this weekend, right? That's all I was thinking about. I wasn't thinking about a future. I didn't think about that at all. I mean, it didn't even, quite frankly, really cross my mind. So even when I graduated from high school, I was just kind of, at that point, I was pretty lost. Even though at the time I didn't think so. And that's what's really interesting, because as a young man or woman, you don't really see the situation you're in because you're in it. And it's really hard. And that's why it's good to have people around you that can give you good advice and protect you from yourself, quite frankly, from making bad decisions. But there was this coach, and he was the coach of the South team. Now, his name was Dirk Cutter. Dirk Cutter he was a high school coach in Idaho, but he's gone on since, and he's been a head coach of the NFL team. So he coached in college and NFL and so forth. And anyway, years later, I once called him and I said, you won't remember me, coach, but you really changed my life, even though you don't know it. But he called me one day that summer, and I said I wasn't going to play in the game, and he called me up and said, hey, Jared, why don't you come and play in this game, and blah, blah, blah. And anyway, he talked me into it. So I said, okay. I quite frankly thought, well, I'm not doing anything. Maybe it'll be fun. So I went and played in this game, and it was in the month of August. So I had graduated from high school, June 5th of that year. This is 1984. That'll date me a little bit, but in August of that same year, we played this all-star game. And after we played the game, this guy came to my hotel room, and he said, hey, Jared, my coach saw you play. He would like you to come and play on our team. And this was a junior college. It was a junior college. This is called Walla Walla Junior College. And the school still exists, but the team, they don't have football there anymore. But they used to. And so the really funny thing about it is I really didn't have any thoughts of going to college. A lot of people in my hometown, it's a big mining town, and there's a lot of farmers around too. So it's kind of mining and farmers, but a lot of people go work in the mines there. And coming out of high school, they were making really good money. So they, for someone with just a high school degree working in these mines, they would make some pretty good money, and they buy themselves a really cool car. And, that would be their life for the next 3 years, which is fine. It's great. I got friends that still live there, and they've done just fine for themselves working in the mines. But I'm actually really happy that that wasn't my life. So this guy comes to my hotel room and he's like, "Hey, you want to come and play?" And I mean, the funny thing when I look back on it, I was like, I'm not doing anything, sure. So quite frankly, because I had no plans, nothing to do, I went and played this game. Now, I believe that the Lord had a hand in Coach Cutter calling me and getting me to come and play on his team. And, he probably just wanted to win the game. I don't know how much he cared about me as an individual. Maybe he did, but anyway, he probably wasn't even thinking about it in those terms. But you can see how it completely changed the trajectory of my life, right? I didn't know that I was already going to play football again. So at that point, so anyway, I said, okay, I'll do that. And so I had one of my best friends growing up. He lived right across the street from me, and we were friends since the first grade. And he decided, he wasn't doing anything else. I mean, quite frankly, he was in a similar spot as me. He didn't really have anything else to do either. But he actually came from a very nice, cohesive family. So he decided to go to Walla Walla with me. So we got in my car and we drove up there. And then when we were there, we had to sleep in the park one night because we didn't have a hotel or any place to stay. So just quite frankly, we drove to a park and put our sleeping bags out and slept on the grass. And it was pretty funny because, it was about 4 or 5 in the morning. I see this light shining in my eyes, and there's these cops standing over me at the flashlight, asking me and my buddy what we're doing. There weren't really homeless people back then walking around. So, I remember I was answering their questions as I was still asleep because I woke up answering their questions. It's kind of a funny experience. But so anyway, that was no big deal. And I drove to the college the next day and I arranged an apartment to live with a bunch of the football players and all this stuff. And my buddy decided he wasn't going to go. He'd actually tried to convince me because I'd saved up this money to pay for my college. My family didn't have any money, by the way. So my car and all these things I paid for myself because I worked. And when I got to college, I had this wad of like $1,500. No, that's not much money today, but back then it was a lot of money. And I'd saved this to go to college. And I had saved this money and I used it to pay my tuition and so forth. But my buddy tried to convince me to leave and go to California with him. He said, "Jared, you got this money. Let's just go to Southern California. We can hang out. It'll be fun." And I have to be honest, I did think about it a little bit, but I was like, no, I'm not going to do that. So then the next day he called his mom and she bought him a flight home and he moved back to Soda and he's lived there ever since. So anyway, I ended up going to this junior college and I played there for 2 years. After that junior college, and to keep myself alive because they weren't giving me money. Actually, my second year, I think they gave me like $200 towards tuition or something, or $200 or $300. Like it was nothing, right? But I had to work, so I'd go to school, I'd play football, I'd practice, and then I would also work. And I worked in their kitchen at the school to get food and pay my rent and all that kind of stuff. So. And there's a couple other players that did the same thing with me. And I think that, from that experience, you just realize that if you want to go somewhere and do something, it doesn't matter if you're poor, because quite frankly, anybody that doesn't have money can find a way. Like if you really want to get somewhere, you can do it. And of course, at this point now I'm getting motivated and I'm excited to play football and make a career out of this. And the interesting thing about junior colleges is they actually have a lot of really good football players there. There's kids that are overlooked, like myself, that didn't get scholarship offers out of high school. But there's other kids that kind of flunked out of really big schools, like in the Pac-12, who were starters and were really good football players and came down and played on these junior college teams to get their grades up, and then they'd go back. So these junior college teams are kind of a farm team for colleges, and they still exist today, and they still serve the same purpose for those two type of players. So there were a lot of good football players on our team, and I played there 2 years. And after my 2 years, Idaho State offered me a partial scholarship. So they said, hey, if you come here, we'll pay your tuition and do all this stuff, but we won't give you money for room and board, because in football, if you get a full scholarship, they pay for all your school, but they also pay for your rent, they pay for your meals and all that stuff. So it's a really nice deal. But Idaho State wasn't willing to do that for me. So I thought, okay, well, I'm not that excited to play at Idaho State. At Pocatello, that's where I graduated from high school. And so I said, well, actually, I think I want to go play at BYU. And the funny thing is at that time, I never really had any desire to play for BYU. I wasn't a BYU fan. I quite frankly don't even know where the idea came from. But all of a sudden I had this idea, I really wanted to play for BYU. So I also need to add here that, I really was never a good student. I wasn't interested in school. I didn't care about school. I didn't want to be in school. I think, Mackenzie, I told you guys that story about when I was in kindergarten. This is after my mother had passed away. we were in this kindergarten. The kindergarten was the front of the junior high school, and there were 2 rooms for the kids. And there was a second story, and the second story was the bathroom. And when I was in kindergarten, I would skip school and I'd go up in the bathroom and hang out just so I could skip class. And I hated it, right? I just I felt like I was a caged animal, quite frankly. So I'd go hang out in the bathroom by myself, getting out of class. So I think that's pretty funny, though. I used to do that. So same thing with primary. When I was in primary, they used to kick me out of primary. I don't know if you've ever seen a kid get kicked out of primary. I've never witnessed it, but they used to kick me out of primary all the time. They'd be like, you just got to get out. You got to leave. So then they'd go get my dad. My dad was a big man, and he would come and sit in there with me, and he'd be all mad at me and thump me on the head. As soon as he'd leave, I must have been a nightmare for these poor teachers. So anyway, for anybody that's a primary teacher out there, I feel for you for having a kid like me. So anyway, as I'm going through school, I got done playing at Walla Walla, and I decided to go to BYU. So I sent my film to BYU, and they said, well, we think you look good, but we'll give you what they call a walk-on, like a preferred walk-on thing, right? They weren't giving me a scholarship, but they'd give me a spot on the team. So I thought, okay, I'll take it, right? I don't want to go to Iowa State, even if they pay for my tuition. I didn't really want to play there. So, but they looked at my grades and they go, well, Jared, your grades are bad. So they're not good enough to get into BYU. What you need to do is go take some more classes at a junior college and prove that you can get good grades, and then we'll let you in. So, so I went to this. My family at the time then moved to Arizona. So Mesa Community College is this really big junior college. There's like 20,000 students there. And so I went there for 2 summer semesters, and I got like a 3.5, which quite frankly is the highest GPA I'd ever gotten in my life, right? And because I actually started working at it. The thing you realize is if you've never been a good student, it actually takes time to learn how to become a good student. It really doesn't matter just how smart you are. It's kind of learning how to study and those sorts of things. So the earlier you learn those capabilities, then you're better off. But so I got 3.5, and BYU, they said, okay, you can come here and play. So I went there and I did a thing called redshirting. So when you go play college football, you have 5 years, but you can only play in 4 years when you play in the games. So I'd already played 2 years because I was playing in the games at Walla Walla, and then I redshirted there for a year. So I redshirted, and then in the second semester at BYU, and by the way, at this time, the thing I have to point out too is when I was at Walla Walla, I didn't ever go to church. I went one time. I went to the building, and I was just kind of like walking in, and I thought, oh, maybe I should go to church, And so I walked in the building, and there were some people around. They said hi or whatever, and there was one. I remember there was this one gentleman in an office. He was like in a clerk's office, something. And anyway, he didn't really have much to say to me, so I just left. right? There was nobody that came up and said, "Hey, you look new," or "Who are you?" or you know what I mean? Nobody like saw this. I was like a stray dog walking in, and no one grabbed the stray dog and pulled him in, which is fine, right? Because I've probably done that, passed people over at church 100 times. But so anyway, the whole time I was there, I didn't go to church, but there was something inside of me in the back of my mind that told me I needed to start changing my ways. And really, before my sophomore year, my second year of college, when I went back to Walla Walla, I decided that, okay, well, I'm not going to church, but I should really start, keeping these commandments. I just had this feeling inside of myself that I should. No one was telling me to. My dad wasn't like that. My dad, even though my dad was a religious man, and my dad always tried to do the right thing, and my dad never be like honest and telling us you need to do this and you need to do that, or you need to go on a mission. He didn't do any of that. And I actually think it was good, because I think when I actually did go on a mission, which I'll tell in a minute, I saw kids that went out on missions that were told to go there by the parents, and it was a mess. And one of them was my companion. Quite frankly, it was a disservice to him, and it was a disservice to everybody else too. And you could tell his parents just basically forced him to go out there. It's a bad situation. Much better for him to stay home, is my opinion. Because it didn't turn out good for him. It turned out really, really bad. So go back to BYU. I went when I went to BYU, of course, I had to, meet their standards, their moral standards, and I did. Right at that point in my life, I was living in such a way that I could be asked those questions and get that endorsement to go to BYU. So I felt good about that. And when I went to BYU, then I started to go to church and attend church. And so that part was all good on my spiritual side. And then, so I was making decisions. I think the key thing is I was making decisions on my own. Nobody was telling me to do that. Nobody. I was just making my own decision to do that. My dad wasn't. My dad didn't. I go to BYU, and I'm there for a year. At the end of the year, they said, "Okay, Jared, at the end of this year," see, the thing that I didn't really understand when I went there was I actually wasn't accepted to BYU. I was actually in their night school program. BYU has this night school program you can get into. You can go to school there, but you're not actually accepted to BYU. See, I had no idea. I didn't have anybody giving me any direction on this stuff. I had no idea. So I go there in the spring. They have this thing called spring football, and that's where you kind of prove yourself. You really try to earn a scholarship. Well, when it came to spring football, they found out, "Oh, hey, Jared, we directed you wrong. You actually can't play spring football because you're not actually a student at BYU." And when I went to BYU, they said, for you to continue here, I had to get a certain GPA. I'm not going to tell you what that GPA had to be because it's embarrassing. But let me just say that I missed it. At the end of the year, I missed the GPA I had to get by 1/10 of a point. Now, to give myself a little credit, I would get up at 6 in, and I'd go lift weights. And then I would go to football and football meetings, all that stuff. And I'd go to school because I was in, BYU's night school. And so, and then at night, after I get out of night school, I would work, and I'd go this movie theater. I'd clean this movie theater tonight, and I'd get done at, I don't know, 12 to 12:30 or maybe 1 in. And then I'd, get on my bicycle and ride home. So I lived in this dive apartment. There were 5 or 6 guys living in 2 rooms. They packed us in like rats, but I lived on ramen and pancake mix, to be honest. So I had to pay my own way, to pay my rent, and I had to live. So I lived in this really cheap place and earned my own way. And at the end of the 2 semesters, my GPA wasn't good enough to get in. So I went home, and I was pretty devastated because at this point, this is like when Jonah got swallowed by the whale, right? And the Lord had something else he wanted me to do. But at this point, I was so low and so depressed that I finally, turned to the Lord and was willing to listen. So I remember I went to my dad one night and I said, by the way, my family was super poor. I mean, the church used to feed us. I used to go when we were in Arizona, my whole family would go to the movie theaters at night to clean them. And that's how I got the job in Provo, is we'd clean theaters. So my father and me and my stepmom and my other siblings, we'd go and we'd clean the theaters every night. It's super humbling. Let me just tell you, it's so humbling to see all those people walking out knowing, and you're going in to clean up all of their popcorn and all the stuff they leave all over the theater. And you have to scrub. We'd have to clean, like, there's probably 10 different theaters in this big multiplex. And then the church would pay our rent. The church would give us food. I would go to the bishop's storehouse and put a grocery cart around and put food in. And I got to tell you, it made me feel terrible. But the church was there for us, and took care of us. So what an amazing blessing to know people took money out of their pocket and gave to the church so they could feed families like mine. And I remember my dad, my stepmom, they had these 2 piece of junk cars. I don't even remember what they were. They couldn't have been worth more than $600 or $700 each. And one day, this guy came with a tow truck and repoed one of the cars. I'd never, quite frankly, seen my father cry. He was a really big, proud man, and he's not a guy that would cry, but I watched them tow that car away, and I watched my dad cry. This is when, I'd gone to 2 years. I was probably 19 then, 19 or 20 years old. So super humbling. But so when I came back, I asked my dad, I felt like, I just spent 3 years playing football and going to college, and I had failed, right? I completely failed. And so it's a very difficult situation. So I went to my dad one night and I was like, hey, Dad, do you think, they talk about if you read the Book of Mormon and you'll pray and know it's true and all this stuff. I'm like, do you really believe that's true? Like, will that really happen for me? And he said, yeah. He said, yeah, I believe it will, Jared. So then I started reading the Book of Mormon, and my bishop at the time, he was a pretty sly guy. He calls me into his office and he goes, hey, Jared, I got these papers here I'd like you to fill out. And I'm like, well, what are they? He's like, well, they're your mission papers. I was like, well, what are you talking about? I said, I just want you to fill them out. I'm like, well, why am I going to fill them out? We're not going to send them in. I'm not going on no mission, right? It's like, so he's like, no, we won't send them in. We won't send them in. We're just going to fill them out. And I'm just going to leave them right here in my desk. And I was like, well, you can fill them out all you want, but we're not sending them in. He said, okay, that's cool. We're fine. So anyway, fill them out and I leave. And I don't know how much longer it went on, but then obviously he had put the thought in my mind about going on a mission. I made it real because these are papers that we'd filled out, right? So all of a sudden it changed my mind and my direction of where I was going. And I started thinking about going on a mission. So then I decided to go on a mission, and I went into the bishop's office and I said, okay, let's send him in. He's like, oh, this is great. This is great, Jared. So I said, is there a place on there where I can request where I'm going to go? He said, no, there's no place to request. And I said, well, there's a space right here. I'm going to write it down. So I put on here, the first place I want to go is New Zealand. The second place I want to go is Australia. I was pretty unorthodox, right? I didn't really care if there was no place to put my requests. I wrote them on there. And so actually I did go to Australia, which is kind of a funny story. So for all these that want to go on a mission, hey, just write something on there. Maybe you'll get it. I don't know. So anyway, I went on a mission, and I do remember the night before I went into the MTC, I had an amazing experience. And it was that peace that I talked about earlier. It's this peace that just nothing else can bring. And I felt that. The MTC was starting off the MTC was such a great experience. It was amazing. I had these two different teachers, and I don't even remember their names, but the spiritual experiences I had there were amazing. The experiences I had on my mission were, I can't really describe them. I'm not going to try to, but things happened there that I think the difference is if people choose not to go on a mission, they're going to miss out on those opportunities. There's a brotherhood you feel with the other missionaries, and lots of guys from my mission that I'm still friends with. But more important for that, there's people whose lives you change, And I lived in this one town for 11 months. I went to Western Australia, so you were on your mission, but you were kind of on your own. So I was a district leader in this one area for like half my mission, the second half of my mission. And we were in this little town called Rockingham in, Australia. We were, I don't know, 2.5 hours away from the mission home. We were just on our own. But all the people in that ward, when I left, they had this massive send-off for me because I had, become part of their families and had the opportunity to bring people to the gospel. And it's just amazing experiences. And I still have so many memories of the great experiences on mission. So it definitely changed my life and the trajectory of my life and my testimony. To me, you got your life, you've got freedom, and you've got your testimony. And you need all three of those, right? You need to be alive, number one. Number two, you need the freedom to choose. Number three, you need to have conviction of those things. And your mission helps lay the foundation for that conviction. Because you're going to face things. You're going to go through periods in your life. There's going to be times when you wake up and you say, I don't know if there's really a God. That's super normal. If you don't do that, then something's abnormal with you, if I believe. And so you have those, but your mission helps give you those moments and those experiences with people. I had so many. Really, solidifies your belief in God, your belief in the Book of Mormon, and your belief that the Lord has a plan for you. And felt like everything was going to be okay. So went on my mission. I had a great experience. Now, the great thing about the Lord is, I said earlier, the Lord will do more with your life than you can do without Him. During those couple of years I was on my mission, BYU did not have a good team. That was like the late 80s, right? They weren't very good. So I come back off my mission, and BYU, my coach calls me up and said, hey, Jared, I got a scholarship for you. And I was like, wow. Now, the dirty little secret is now my GPA didn't matter so much, right? So if they were giving me a scholarship, all of a sudden that GPA, don't really worry about that. It was above the NCAA minimum, so that's all that mattered, right? So anyway, it was amazing. It was amazing. I got off my mission in October, and I think the end of October or something. And my coach called me up in December and said, we got a scholarship for you, so we want you to be up here in January to start school. So the piece where I want to explain, is if I hadn't gone through that, let's say that I had stayed at BYU and played, BYU wasn't very good during this year, so I was gone. So when I came back was the year that Ty Detmer won the Heisman. We were both juniors in college then. He won the Heisman Trophy, and at one point in the season we're ranked third in the nation. And so I'm flying high. I'm like, this is amazing. We're winning. We have this amazing team. We're, third in the nation, which is the highest I think BYU maybe had been since they won the national championship. Anyway, we had beat the University of Miami, which they had been number one, and they'd won the national championship a couple years in a row. They were this amazing dominant team, and we beat them, which was a miracle. Everybody knows about the Miami game. And in that game, I led our team in tackles, and so I had this amazing game. And anyway, we get into our fifth game of the season, and we're playing the Ducks. Which, I don't know, because you might be a fan of the Ducks, but I'm not. So anyway, we're playing the Ducks, and I tackle this guy, and I break my neck. And so, like, my arm goes paralyzed, and then finally comes back, but they take me off the field. And I go to the doctor, 2 days later, and he's like, we have to operate on your neck. And, so I'm like, man, like, what's going on, Lord? You already know where I've been, what I've gone through to get here. Now I was at like my peak, right? And I had NFL scouts looking at me and talking about me and all of these things, all these dreams of, getting that card that I talked about when I was in the fourth grade. And, it all came to an end. And so I had 2 neck surgeries. I had a surgery the very next day. And then that surgery really didn't work. And so I had another surgery about 2 months later. That one did work. So I was able to come back and play my senior year. But nobody in the NFL would touch me at that point because of my neck, right? So I got to play football again. It was kind of crazy when I think back on it, because, if you hurt your neck, that's, you could be paralyzed. You could be not walking the rest of your life. And I remember we were playing Florida State, our very first game, my senior year. And I ran down the field, and I hit this guy, and this pinky went numb, completely numb. And I knew it was my neck, but I didn't say a word to anybody. I just played with it, but I knew I could be paralyzed. But at that point, I really didn't care. So I ended up graduating. I didn't have to work anymore at the movie theater. I didn't have to live in this dive apartment with 6 guys piled in there like rats. And I met this amazing woman, my wife, and I graduated from BYU, and we got married right after I graduated. And we've had 4 amazing kids. And, I didn't make it to the NFL, but I'm wearing this Raiders shirt because this is my boys' team. This is who my sons played for 4 years. They're playing, and they play. He plays safety for them, and they play Cincinnati in the playoffs on Saturday. We just went to their game last Sunday. It was amazing. They beat the Chargers in overtime, so it's this amazing experience. So even though I didn't achieve what I wanted, I have a football card with my boy. I've got all kinds. I got more Raider paraphernalia than you can imagine. And my other son is a good football player as well. He's just in high school, but the thing that's been great about football and that is that the Lord, I was able to coach my 2 boys, growing up in football. I coached them for 14 years in youth football, and we have so many memories together, endless. Like, we'll just be sitting on the couch or something, or I'll be talking to my older son on the phone, and we'll bring up some memory of some game when they were in the 6th grade, and it was the 3rd quarter, and this play happened, and we're both laughing about the play. And so we have so many memories together, right? This has been amazing. And I have 2 daughters. I don't want to leave them out. We have my own experiences with them that are different, but football has been something that I've shared. I had my grandpa, this jersey right here. sweater 42. That was my grandfather's. He played for Utah State when he was a young man. And then my son down this, he played at Utah State as well. He played at BYU for a little bit, but then he had a better experience at Utah State, and then he went to the Raiders after that. But I've had, when I look back on my life that I've lived so far, I figure I'm probably past halftime now in my life. But the life that I have now is far exceeded anything I'd ever really imagined when I was young. And I know it's from attempting to, follow the Lord's plan. And, the reality is I don't know that your life gets any easier by following the gospel plan, but you definitely have more purpose and you have a lot more peace. I was able to go to the temple last night, and I told my wife, I was just in there, and it just, felt so calm and so peaceful. And it's a feeling you can't get anywhere else, in this peace of mind. And it's amazing to know that, we're sealed together as families forever. And just nobody else really has that understanding of being together as a family forever. So anyway, I've been, blessed beyond measure with what the Lord's done for me. He's always helped me provide for my family, and so that we could, live in a decent place and not be crammed in with 6 other guys in a small room. But yeah, it's kind of my story. It's not the end. So I'm hoping that, those people out there, there hopefully some listening to this, is that realize that, I've been a person that's lived on both sides of the fence, and this side, trying to live on this side, trying to do the right thing, is just a lot better than on the other side. The other side just brings so much chaos. It's just chaos and debris everywhere. That's the way I think about it. And even though people aren't perfect, people in your ward aren't perfect, there's going to be people that offend you and hurt your feelings. But I can tell you that that's definitely where the Lord wants you to be. And if you'll just try, that He's going to bring that peace to your life. Kenzie, that's my story.
Thank you so much. It's such a powerful story, and it's like so empowering and impactful, and like everything that you talked about. One more thing, where was like your big fork in the road moment where you had to choose if you'd go alone through your life or if you'd go with God through your life?
I think there's a lot of little forks. I would say, obviously, the biggest fork, I think, in the road was, well, once when I decided to when I went back to Walla Walla my sophomore year, I decided that I needed to, keep the commandments. That was one big one, I think. And the other one is when, I had failed at BYU and I decided to go on a mission. I think that was another one. So I think those are two of the biggest. And obviously, I think, that coach that asked me to play on his all-star team, that was a big fork as well, because otherwise I probably would have got a job at the local mine and, worked there the rest of my life.
Yeah. Well, I think that's all the questions I have. And like, I don't know, everything you talked about is so awesome, and just everything you cover and your whole story. So I think people will be impacted by it. Thanks so much for sharing it all.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Kenzie. I appreciate it.
So thanks for watching, everyone. Thanks for following along and tuning in. For now, we can leave you and you can be impacted and go off with a hope to change your life as well. This is it. So bye.